Today on the podcast, we will be speaking about sex positivity, and our guest is Sarian Kamara. Sarian is a community development worker, a female genital mutilation/cutting survivor, and director at Keep the Drum, Lose the Knife, or KDLK for short. KDLK is a community interest group working to end FGM-C within the Sierra Leonean communities in the UK and Sierra Leone. After years of withholding trauma and physical pain, Sarian found the courage to speak out about her own experience of FGM-C. She now runs community outreach activities and safe spaces supporting other women to share their experiences of life after FGM-C, domestic and sexual abuse, sex and pleasure after FGM-C. The support sessions Sarian runs are both one-to-one and group sessions. Sarian, welcome to the podcast. We are delighted to have you as our guest today.
Thank you so much, Rkia, and thank you for having me here. I am so delighted to featured in the AmplifyChange podcast. I really like the topic, sex positivity, because it means a lot to me and it speaks volume in terms of my experience. As someone who has been through violence, through culture, in a sense, we were not caught because our family wants to inflict pain on us. They're doing it because they believe it's the best thing they could do for us. But in essence, it's to control our sexuality. So this topic, it's really, really close to my heart.
Sarian, sex positivity is a term some people will know, but others might not have heard of before, or they may know it by a different name. What does sex positivity mean to you, Sarian, and to keep the drum, lose the knife?
Sex positivity, to me, it means freedom and willingness to engage sexually and with the aim to have pleasure with consent. For me, I think that's what it should be. Some of the women, most of the women we support in our communities in Sierra Leone, I've never heard of the word sex positivity because the cultural barrier that we have between us as women and men. When I'm speaking in context of Sierra Leone, because that's where I am from. And this is how I understand sex and positivity and all this cultural background that is deterring women and or stopping women from accessing their full potential in terms of sex and pleasure. So it is very interesting for we to have this conversation. And I hope that women of Sierra Leone or women from Africa, First Africa, will get to see this podcast, and maybe contribute or ask questions, maybe learn from what we're going to discuss here today.
Yeah.
So women from this kind of background really don't know pleasure in terms of sex. Most of the time, women who are married in certain homes, they're just commanded when their partners need sex. They just ask them to lie down. So the positiveness has been taken away from them. Women don't see sex as something that is pleasurable. Mm-hmm. They see it's pleasurable for the man because most of the time they've been suppressed. It's been taken by force in that sense. So women don't really see the positiveness in terms of sex. So, but for me, if I was to define sex positivity, it means willingness, and I should be happy, and I believe that my partner should have my consent. Before engaging in short activities. That is the positivity.
Sarian, how does Keep the Drum, Lose the Knife work with beneficiaries to help them achieve sex positivity in their lives?
We're a female-led organization, and I would say 80% of the women who are working with us in Keep the Drums, Lose the Knife have been through female circumcisions. And for that reason, this has affected our sex life negatively from the beginning. In fact, there are some women in our communities who, even when you're engaging sexually with your partner, you cannot express yourself the way you feel. You have to suppress it. That's another negative side. For we at Keep the Drums, Lose the Knife, we are using our experience in a very positive light to shine light on the positiveness of sexuality and sex. Like for me, even if I said yes, if I change my mind, I still have the right to say, no, So these are the kind of things we share with women in a safe space. We also shared with women, how do you engage positively to have pleasurable sex? We use our experiences to share to other women who are still locked up in terms of culture, because culture say you cannot ask your husband for sex. Some culture, you cannot advance for sex to your partner. They will just think that when they're not around, you go after other men. Remember, this is the reason why women and girls have been circumcised, They go through FGM because of those reasons, because they believe that women who are not circumcised are promiscuous. So these are the kind of things we educate our women with, to say, look, it's in the mind, although your clitoris have been cut off, but if you love your partner and you are willing to engage, and he is willing to engage sexually, you can achieve a pleasurable sex. But it all has to come to a mutual agreement, not by force.
That sounds very interesting, Sarian. Thank you very much for that. Could you develop a little bit about this outrage activities Keep the Drum, Lose the Knife is organizing?
Mostly we focus on women who have already been through FGM, because we want to support them in breaking this cultural barrier of suppressing their sexual appetite and their sexual life and their sexual freedom. But in this space, sometimes we invite women who have not been through FGM. The reason why we invite women who have not been through FGM is to break this barrier that girls and women who have been caught are sexually disabled. So we want them to hear from women who have not been through FGM, who are still struggling with sex life. So we still have safe space every fortnight, every 2 weeks. And this is in Sierra Leone as well, with our advocates. In this safe space, we discuss about different things. We discuss about domestic violence. We discuss about FGM and domestic violence. We discuss about FGM and mental health. But when we talk about our sexuality and the positivity of sexuality, of sex, we kind of prepare these women in a way that they know from the beginning that sex has to be two-way thing. And sometimes we invite their partners as well. We've had several workshops where we have the safe space for women and their partners, because these women have been sharing their experience, their ordeal of how they cannot say no to their husband. One main thing for some of our culture, when you're married, one thing your family will tell you, that you can never deny your husband sex. It's the biggest taboo you could commit as a wife. So it's most of our women is in their head. Once the man demands, you just think it's their rights. So we try to educate these women to say, look, you've got to be willing and you have to be ready. And you have the right to say no. It is your right to say no. It is actually a positive thing to say, no, I am not ready for sex, not today. This is your right. It's your body. You have to be ready. You have to be willing. It is also your right to ask for sex from your partner, as long as he is willing and he is happy to engage. So those are the kind of things we discuss about. We talk about the physical trauma, the physical pain when women are penetrated, when their body is not ready and they were forcibly penetrated. is different to women who are not being through FGM. Because the area where they cut within your vagina, the clitoris that they remove, we who have been through FGM, we're left with really thick scar tissue that doesn't stretch. Yeah. So when you have a forceful penetration, it is very painful, and you can end up with tears around your vagina opening. So partners will understand, like our husbands, what no means, taking away the cultural barriers, thinking of your wife, the woman you love, how you want her to be happy. You want her to be sexually involved when making love. Not lying there waiting patiently for you to just get it over with. And most of the time, sex is demand of them without consent. And sometimes their partners will take it. But again, our people don't see it as rape. Most of these women don't even know. They can't define rape in terms of within their relationship. But we also draw the fact that rape can happen within your marriage. Sometimes we kind of use certain situations to draw a general discussion within that community. And whenever we do that, you would see so many of the women and the men who stood up and say, yes, it has to stop. We're fed up. We need to move on with the rest of the world, because we show them videos, we show them clips of even as close as Freetown, what's happening in the other side of the world, how the world is moving.
You talked about other aspects of sexual violence and rape and the way women are sharing their experience and the involvement of the engagement and active participation of the partners, which is great. Sarian, what other aspects of sexual and reproductive health and rights do you think can be positively affected by awareness of sex positivity?
The reason why sex positivity is important, women will have the choice to engage sexually and to be able to say no, and to have choice when to have children, to have the right to have abortion if they fell pregnant and they don't need that pregnancy or they're not ready to have those children. Most of the time we see women don't have the right to control their birth. In fact, there's some women who will tell you that it is against my religion to have contraception. In this space, we talk about those things. Like, as women, if you are married, you're sexually active, you have the right to make decisions when you can have children, when to have children, and when not to have children. In Sierra Leone, there are different organizations that are raising awareness and they're giving free contraception. So we signpost these women to those services so that they know it is their right to control when and how they give birth, preventing themselves from those kind of disease that you can get out there. Yeah. Let's say somebody want to have sex with you and you want to use condom. Again, that's another big area in terms of our cultural barriers. It is again a taboo for women to demand for their partners to use condom. This same culture give men the right to sleep with other women, to marry as many wives as they can. But in terms of Sierra Leone and other parts of Africa, the culture is a big barrier to promoting sexual positivity. It's a big barrier. But we're doing our best to advocate, to educate, to share safe space, and create safe hubs for these women to learn and share and to know the way forward in terms of sexual positivity. But it's a massive, massive area in terms of women's rights and responsibilities.
It's fantastic the work you are doing, and it sounds like restoring balance in the relationship between men and women, empowering women in taking control on their own body and making decisions and be active participants in the relationship. would you just a little bit develop on this area of empowerment and how the community are perceiving that? Is it challenging for women to accept these ideas in the way that they may see it opposing their religious beliefs or traditions or something like that?
You're spot on. It is very, very challenging, these topics to have within our communities, because men are held in very high esteem in every community in terms of decision making for their wives and their children. Every community in Sierra Leone, men are at the top of that. You can never see women and men across our community leveling up in terms of decision making. And that's including every aspect of their life, from their bedroom to the kitchen. In every sense, men are very powerful within our community. And I'm talking about the regular Sierra Leone communities and family. I'm talking about the communities, the provinces, the villages, because that's where we work. For me, that's where I believe the change is needed. Because the rest of Freetown and other big cities, they're moving with the rest of the world. We do work with communities in Freetown, but we work differently. I.e., we can reach them via Zoom, WhatsApp, Skype. It's very easy to engage them. If I was talking to communities in Freetown and I talk about sex positivity, I would say maybe 20% of the people I'm talking to would have an idea of what sex positivities are. While if you have to talk to people within the villages, they don't even know what that means.
Yeah, that's great, because that touch on the other question. How are you spreading the word about your work and sex positivity, and what challenges have you overcome and how?
The communities where we work, most of these women cannot even afford mobile phone. And even if they can afford mobile phone, there is no network. So you cannot connect. These are the women I'm talking about, who still depend on walking miles to take message to somebody else. Sometimes it's very difficult for we to connect with our volunteers when they're on the field. Somebody have to go there in person to meet them, because the communities where we work, they're so remote. And sometimes these people are even cut off from the rest of Sierra Leone. So it is very, very difficult taking a message of positive sex to a community, to women of that community. You have to engage them with their partners.
Okay.
And you have to be very cautious. We use the gatekeepers to get into these people. Because men are so powerful within these communities, and they're in full control of what happened within their household and even outside of their household in terms of their women and their children. We cannot work with the women and leaving the men out. The gatekeepers within these communities are the local chiefs and the head men. So 6 of the chiefs within the 7 community we work with right now in Bombali, Makini, are volunteering with us.
On that aspect of the work to reach community in Sierra Leone, you said you are mainly working with or relying on gatekeepers. That's kind of spreading the word around the communities and contacting you in case of
any issues. But,
could you develop a little bit on that?
The reason why, when we go into these communities, we try to go through the gatekeepers, who are the headman and the chiefs. Every community have their own bylaws. There are some communities where we cannot do the kind of work we're doing.
Okay.
So you cannot just go into a community and then just start to campaign about ending FGM or talk about sexuality or domestic violence. You'll be chased out of the community, or probably you'll be issued a fine. You're going against whatever belief they have. as a community. So we use these people to usher the rest of the community to call meeting for we to be able to say our message. But we have to educate these gatekeepers of our mission within their community.
Yeah.
And they have to agree with us at some point of the level of information we are to give out and guide us through their traditional laws within that community. So working with those people, they were able to identify men and women within the community that we can train as advocates.
Yeah.
To advocate for us, to join us as volunteers to push the message of KDLK. So this is how we operate within these communities.
Thank you very much. Very, very interesting. Finally, Sarian, what 3 steps would you suggest to our listeners who want to include sex positivity in their sexual and reproductive health and rights work?
When you go into this community, be willing to listen. You cannot just go into the community and begin to tell them what to do. Yeah. You have to listen to them for you to understand what are their issues, what areas do they need help with, and know how you can support them. At KDLK, we believe that change has to come from within.
Yeah.
The people themselves have to accept that they need change. They need to identify that they have issues before you're able to offer a solution. 2, make sure you're giving the correct information in a most respectable way, because for we working in these provinces, you cannot do it if you don't have respect. You have to show respect for their culture and whatever they believe in. You must not give up easily. Do not give up on a community, because sometimes there's one of the communities that it took us about 2 years before we get to work with them. But you have to know that it will take time to change mindset. And these cultural practices that have been going on for decades. And most of the time, people who are doing these cultural things, that's their way of making income. Yeah. So they're seeing you as you're coming to take from them. We're not going into that community to change it. You must always remember that. You're going there to learn from them and bring information to them. It is up to them to process this information to arrive at where you want to arrive. So it is very important to listen, learn, and reflect.
Great. Amazing work, Sarian. Thank you very much for being with us. I'm sure our listener will enjoy it. Thank you very, very much.
You're very much welcome. I am so happy about this podcast. It is always a pleasure working with AmplifyChange. And I want to use this opportunity to say thank you to you and the rest of AmplifyChange and Manion Daniels for all the support you've been giving to grassroots work like us. Without that support, we would not be able to bring about the change within our different communities.
Thank you so very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Next time on the AmplifyChange podcast.
Hi, I'm Eloise Walton. I'm a Senior Operations Manager at Manion Daniels and one of its training experts on safeguarding of children and vulnerable adults. I'm a guest on AmplifyChange's new podcast on safeguarding. Please tune in to hear me talk about what safeguarding is, why it's so important, and what you can do to incorporate it into your SRHR work.